Hello and welcome to this download from Blackwell Online. My name is George Miller, and my guest today is Mary Beard. Mary is Professor of Classics at Cambridge, edits the classics pages of the TLS, and writes a hugely popular A Don's Life blog. She's also the author of several books, including a very short introduction to classics and a recent study of the Roman triumph. It's impossible to read Mary's books and not get the impression that the ancient world was both more interesting and often stranger than we commonly imagine it. And so it is with her latest book on Pompeii. It's a fascinating exploration of how 1st century AD Romans lived, worked, loved and worshipped. I began by asking Mary to tell me about her own first visit to the city.
Oh, I went to Pompeii actually when I was about 19, and I was still an undergraduate, and I'd done a course in my classics degree in Cambridge. I'd done a course on Pompeii, and I actually went feeling rather confident that I knew about this place. And I went with my mate who hadn't done the course on Pompeii, but was also doing classics, and the idea was going to be I was going to show her around. And I think that's when I first decided that Pompeii was both more interesting and more complicated than I'd been led to believe. And I remember we'd spent a very, very long time looking at Pompeian painting on the walls of the houses at Pompeii, and how this was divided into 4 styles, which I'd written essays on and been to lecture after lecture on, and I was all ready to tell my mate just about how Pompeian painting worked. And when I got there, it didn't seem to fit what I'd learned. I looked at all these walls, and they were all a bit different, and I thought I was going to say, oh, I think this is 2nd style, and I couldn't really tell them apart. And for some time I was a bit sort of taken aback by this, and I thought, help, I haven't done this properly, I still haven't got the hang of this. But it was sort of later I kind of flipped that, and I thought, no, it's not me that's stupid here. It's what we were learning that was stupid. It isn't as simple as what you've got in the books. And at that point, I always thought, yeah, I'd like to do something about this and share that kind of problem with people.
And what you say about the styles of Pompeian painting holds good for everything, really. Every aspect of daily life that you talk about, it is, as you say, more complicated than we think. It's
more complicated than we think. But also, and I think this is the good news, I think what my book tries to do is to say, look, if you're sensible and you use your eyes and you just think, if you go around Pompeii with your brain switched on, you can see all kinds of things and you can work it out for yourself. You don't have to believe all this tosh that you're told about, whether it's the 4 styles or how this or that worked or what this building looked like. So what's great about Pompeii is both that it is more complicated than everyone always tells you, but it's kind of, you can open it up for yourself if you just look, if you go around saying, oh, I wonder how they lit this room, where was the window, this kind of thing. And as soon as you get your brain turned on and your eyes open, you can make the site work for you. And that's what I think is great fun about it. But the non-expert going around sometimes will be misled by restoration or indeed misdirection from the signs or from the guidebook, won't they? Well, of course, I'm bound to say that the non-expert will need my book before they can really understand and start to use their eyes and their brain on the site. And there's some background information that you need to know, and actually it's background information that you're not often told. Right? What I thought was amazing when I came to really decide what I was going to say about this site was that an awful lot of the really essential information is kept from you. The single biggest factor that makes a huge difference to how you look at the site is an awful lot of it has been restored. Pompeii was a town that was destroyed by a volcano. When volcanoes erupt, they do not leave the buildings with their roofs on, right? And one of the things that the people in the site have done, the archaeologists in the site have done since the late 19th century, I think for very good reason, is actually restore these buildings. They've put roofs on, they've tried to recreate the houses as they thought they were. But I think it's terribly important to realise that most of the stuff you see in Pompeii, which is above kind of human height, most of it, not absolutely all of it, is 19th and 20th century masonry. It's not ancient. And when you see that, that explains why the colour sort of changes, halfway up the wall. And I'm not against restoration at all. I think it makes the houses much easier to understand and you get a feel of what they're like and all the rest. But I think it's terribly important to know that. And that's never said. I've listened to people go around houses clearly thinking that everything they see is Roman.
You talk about the murals in the house and in the Villa of the Mysteries and how that gives you perhaps the best example of the sort of visual saturation of this sort of all-round wall painting. But that is the result of heavy restoration, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, it's the Villa of the Mysteries with this extraordinary, bright, all-encompassing red room with something very strange going on, which we no longer understand, but involving flagellation, weddings, revealing phalluses and this kind of stuff. One of the big tourist hotspots of the site. It is terribly affecting when you go. You really kind of think, God, I'm really here walking into a Roman site with all the kind of lusciousness in your face of this deep, dark, gorgeous red. I mean, a bit over the top for my taste, but still very in your face. Well, it was only a few years ago that I realised, thanks to some work that a couple of American archaeologists had done on it, that gorgeous kind of saturation bombing feel of this room was the result of restoration when it was first uncovered. They had a problem, they uncovered this gorgeous painting, but there was an awful lot of damp and sort of nasty salt crystals started to appear through the painting, which was deeply disfiguring of their great new find. The only way they could think of removing it and protecting it was wiping off the salt crystals and smearing it with petroleum jelly. Now, that seeped into the painting, and it's what accounts in very large part for the wonderful lustrous quality that the painting has.